podcast time. I'm Dan Clayton. That over there is Mark Pereira. We're 23 games into the Jazz season, which feels like a weird time to do this big macro check-in, except that it's not anymore because with the NBA's in-season tournament now we get this fun little break. Not exactly a break, but the Jazz have like this 8-day period with one game in it. So it kind of spiritually winds up functioning a little bit like the fall, early winter version of an all-star break. That's about a third of the way into the season, a little less than a third of the way into the season. Then, we'll go a couple months more. There'll be another break, another logical sort of lull in the action where we can evaluate things and take a macro look at the Jazz. So now the NBA kind of has this like trimester thing just naturally in its progression. And we decided that made it a good time to ask some big high-level questions, check in on each other's kind of preseason thoughts. Where were we right? Where were we wrong? I can talk also. So that's what we're going to do in this Salt City Hoops podcast. Mark, how are we doing? You ready for the Christmas season? Here's what I really want to know, because I know that you've got small kids. Are we elfing on shelving in the Pereira household?
No, we don't add unnecessary obligations to the house. We have way too much going on.
Okay.
I am a big interior decorator for Christmas. I love doing a lot of that stuff. Exterior, we do have a lot of stuff up. Props goes to my wife for doing a lot of the exterior stuff this year. We kind of split those duties, but it kind of all fell on her this year. But interior, I love going all out. I grew up with not doing a whole lot of decorations, so I'm kind of overcompensating for a childhood devoid of art. So I've done all of the house except for the office that I sit here and do these podcasts with you. And so I have all these Christmas lights kind of sitting around that I haven't strung up, but I did manage to put up the Andrei Kirilenko Nutcracker on my shelf. So at least we have that going on. And much respect to all the elf on the shelf whimsy and everything, because I have 3 young boys who care not so much about the whimsy of Christmas and more about the more material
the transactional
output. It would be a lot of effort with not. We know that our boys wouldn't appreciate as much as some other families would.
So my son, I have one who is exactly the age of your oldest, and then you've got 2 younger ones because you're a masochist. Just kidding. I'm sure it's lovely. We were, as older first-time parents, we were pretty exhausted after one. But anyway, my point is, our 6-year-old kind of digs the idea of elf on a shelf, and there is sort of the motivational thing too. But luckily, his expectations are pretty low in terms of like, we're not like on Etsy every night coming up with like new elaborate, like basically we just put him somewhere that's kind of amusing and, the bar is set pretty low in terms of what counts as creativity.
I respect even doing even a little bit of the effort to go around with school expectations too on Spirit Weeks and everything. It becomes a lot. So we're doing what we can. Christmas will be a magical time. We will be just fine. This gap for the Jazz is also interesting just because it happens in a time of the football season that is really ramping up in college and pro sports. And I deigned to forget to set my fantasy basketball lineup the other day. And I had I'm sure I missed a Jokic triple-double or something on my bench or something. And that's when I know, we talk about the March being the doldrums of the NBA season, but like the couple weeks right before the Christmas Day bonanza is kind of like a little bit of a drag. And that's also part of the reason the NBA Cup, the Emirates Cup, Emirates paid me $100 million to say that, is not quite.
Oh, nice for you.
Yeah, it's a small chunk of change. Maybe I can hire somebody to do Elf on the Shelf next year. It hasn't felt like, oh, I really care about it, because I'm, even as a diehard sicko, I'm still not fully into like the halfway point where we're like, all right, the playoff positioning, draft positioning, trade deadline stuff, that stuff is really, really, really exciting. And right now I'm like 95% gas pedal on the NBA season, where the NBA Cup just doesn't feel that impactful in a way that I'm sure the NBA wants it to. And we don't have to get too much into it, but in a weird way, the courts draw me away from caring about it. Like the courts are that bad. When I watch a game, an NBA Cup game because of the courts, I think this isn't serious. This is an exhibition.
It is gimmicky. It feels gimmicky.
Yes. Whereas like
That's
I
kind
like
of
the
how the league.
WNBA Commissioner's Cup. It's just a couple games sprinkled out throughout the
Yeah.
season, and they just kind of tally it up, and you get some bonus money for it. I feel like that has a little extra panache without the NBA trying to force something new and corporate and branded down our throats.
So Mark and I did not plan to talk about this. You're getting bonus, unplanned Emirates Cup content from us right now. Yeah, I think I sort of feel the same way about the courts and the cup in general. I think I think what the courts I think what the courts make me feel is that the NBA doesn't trust me as a consumer of the product to be able to tell that like when you watch the NBA playoffs, there's like a little court decal, and then like the score bug is different on whatever channel is airing the game, and like that's enough. And we care, and we also know to care because we turn on the TV and it's a playoff game, so it just has a different level of intensity and environment and all those things. Um, and the fact that the NBA has to go to these extra lengths to tell me to care kind of says, number one, they don't trust me, and number two, that they know that this is not the same as a playoff game. I don't. I also, am primarily a fan of a team, follower of a team who hasn't really been relevant during the 3 years of the IST. So maybe that also colors my overall view of it. I look. It makes this doldrum period when Mark Pereira is forgetting to set his fantasy lineup, um, I guess, slightly more interesting for the players, which then maybe by some transitive property makes it more interesting for us. I just, whatever. I'm way more focused on the regular season standings than I care about, like, ooh, who's ahead in the point differential in Group C. But that's just me.
Well, I think
Um,
so. I'm going to say two things, and we can move on to things the Utah Jazz fans care about, which is not the in-season tournament. I love trying stuff. Okay, I really, really, really will never fault. I'm a big NASCAR fan. God forbid they've tried all sorts of really, really dumb things over the years. They're probably going to revert a lot of those changes. I love a league just saying, let's try something different. It'll be harmless. Let's try. Uh, I I think the mistake comes in where they expected us to super like really care about this to an nth degree instead of an appropriate fan reaction that I think is a win for the league if the league was just asking fans to, oh, we have a little extra spice on these games, just a little bit, right? It's not going to be
yeah,
some grand result. It's going to be a fun little extra thing, and the team who wins gets what? They get a little bonus. Maybe we're going to have 4 or 5 games in the middle of December that are kind of important, and maybe we'll draw some extra ratings. And that would have been a fair expectation, but they went into this thinking like this is going to be huge and blow it up, and they hired the same focus group that Ryan Smith consulted for the Utah Jazz uniforms 5 years ago, and that like a bunch of 12-year-olds designing a court on NBA 2K and saying like, oh yeah, we'll just make the courts red and blue or whatever. And instead of just being like, let's just do a little fun extra quirk, they had to make it completely wild and crazy and ended up turning fans off of it. I don't think the Jazz being relevant in the NBA Cup would have changed my opinion. But I'm sure you and I have different, or maybe a lot of the same opinions on actual Utah Jazz things.
well, I don't think it would have changed my opinion about just how sort of patronized I feel by the court exercise of it all. I just think I might be more sort of like I might give a shit more when it comes to like, oh, who's ahead in Group B? Like, what's happening in Group F? Like, that's all.
Yeah.
That's all. But um, but also like I am, for as much of a nerd as I am about basketball, and I'm not really super into really any other league or sport, only because of the sheer number of brain cells I put into NBA. Although weirdly enough, I'm also not like a big fantasy guy, so I'm not worried about like setting my lineups. Did I hear, by the way, in your last solo pod, Kem Birch was a Mark Pereira
So I have three fantasy
Fantasy
leagues.
savior.
They're all
Okay.
different. Kem Birch was a mainstay on my team for a number of years in my 30 team real salary dynasty league. So he was my backup center,
Okay.
and I was in. He was cheap, and he would average like a block a game. And when you have a 30 team fantasy roto league, like
Yeah.
it was actually kind of important. This one has a bunch of this one where I forgot to activate Nikola Jokic. I also signed Marvin Bagley off the bench when because Alex Sarr was missing a few games, and at 5:01 Mountain, which is when your lineup's locked, you can't do anything. I forgot to activate Bagley for 2 nights in a row, and it was when he got like 28 and 10, and the next night he got 5 blocks, and then I finally remembered to activate him, and he shot 20% from the field and got 3 rebounds. And I'm like, this is again, I need to focus up because I have a good roster.
Well, we'll move on from Kem Birch and Marvin Bagley and in-season tournament talk, topics that have very little to do with the purported muse of this podcast, which is a franchise called the Utah Jazz. Mark came up with some really interesting questions that we're going to tackle as we get ready for the Jazz's season to kind of unpause after this weird little break. And the first one, well, actually the first couple, let's kind of bounce these off each other because I think they're meant to sort of answer each other, is a prediction or something that each of us anticipated that just hasn't gone the way we expected, and just that immediately we're wrong about it. And then what's a prediction or something we thought would happen that we were 100% right about, but that wasn't obvious. Like, the Jazz are tanking does not count because everyone sort of knew what this season was about. So I'll go first. I have a couple things jotted down on my what have I been wrong about, because hey, in fairness, I've been wrong about a thing or two. I think on opening night we found out Svi Mikhailiuk was going to start, and I told the fans not to freak out, that he was probably just going to be the placeholder starter that plays like the first 8 or 9 minutes of each half, and would just kind of wave a towel after that. Boy, have I been wrong. We can talk about Svi or not talk about Svi. Keontae George, a lot of people have been wrong about Keontae George. I am in the wrong crowd. I won't say a lot about that because I have a sneaking suspicion we'll talk about Keontae over the course of this podcast. The one that I want to talk about for a minute is just I am disappointed to have been so wrong about Bryce Sensabaugh's role. I just thought that it was so obvious that Bryce, because of the Jordan Clarkson buyout and the Colin Sexton trade and all these other things, that there was just going to be such a scoring void, that the Jazz were going to need his minutes, and that he's such an automatic scorer and just a toolsy, 3-level, I can get my points however I need to get my points sort of guy, that he would just sort of fall sideways into 16 points per game in this season as kind of the next iteration of that Jordan Clarkson off the bench, just, go get me a bucket guy, regardless of efficiency, right? Jordan had years where he did it less efficiently, and then he had years where he did it around league average efficiency. So without predicting anything about what it would cost Bryce to occupy that role from an efficiency standpoint, I just thought this was a guy who was going to be way more relevant to the present day Jazz than he has been. And it's kind of a bummer. I think a lot of it is just, Will keeps telling us that he's having a hard time getting certain guys to just stick to game plans on both ends of the court. He is having a hard time, obviously, in videos that are circulating in the socials, getting guys to just play like they need it, play like they're playing for their NBA lives. And obviously some of those misgivings apply to Bryce because he keeps having these games where he just disappears after, a 6-minute half or whatever. So that's probably, other than Keontae, which again, I'm sure we'll circle back to Keontae at some point. That's one of my biggest sort of, just something I thought was like almost automatic, and we're not even close to that happening. I think he's averaging almost exactly 10, which is like, whatever.
So
10 points per game. No, less than that now because of that 6-minute outing the other night. 8.6 points per game in 15.6 minutes per game.
and
Kind of depressing.
what's the 3-point percentage, since you have it, I assume, in front of your face?
Yeah, he's his shooting splits are 41, 34, and 85.
Yeah, so my three are Svi and Bryce and Taylor Hendricks. So let's go on these three. I it's building off of Bryce, and I'll get into Svi because like those three are like the where I the spirit of my what question I'm trying to pose for like this first third of the season is like where are we like the most wrong? There's a number of things that my predictions and aspirations were wrong, but these are I have three items that are just so wildly off. And for me, the Bryce Sensabaugh, I said, I don't know if I believed in the 3 level scoring quite like role as perhaps you did, and I think there's still an avenue for that later in the season. I was just completely 100% sold that this is the new 40% shooter that any lineup is going to need. And he was missing, and he still is missing a lot. And I mentioned it on a show a couple weeks ago. He's Kyle Korver always
He's
used
missing side to side.
yes, yeah. Kyle
Yeah.
Korver always used to say, if you're missing front to back, that's acceptable. That could be a legs issue. That could be a travel issue. That could be a you're moving around the arc. It could just be a matter of an inch based on where you are in the position. But if you're moving left to right, something's wrong with your form, and he is missing and missing badly from left to right. We got shots going off the backboard. We got shots clanging off the side of the like barely grazing the side of the rim at times, and that's not indicative of a 40+% shooter. Now we see a lot of good 3-point shooters who don't ascribe to the Kyle Korver philosophy. They shoot 36% from three, and they shoot a lot of wild shots, and we've certainly seen a lot of that from Jordan Clarkson. But that's not the style of shooter Bryce Sensabaugh was last year. Bryce Sensabaugh was, this ball doesn't miss. This ball goes where it's supposed to miss. And so I've been profoundly disappointed that the shooting just hasn't been there. And if you want to carry it over, he because he knows he's missing and he's pushing and he's pressing, it's his mind goes completely blank as he's running back down to play defense. He's like it's almost like he's still thinking about that shot as he goes back. And a point on the Will Hardy effort thing, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk about later, maybe we won't. So I think a lot of breath is being spent talking about Will Hardy begging for effort. And I think a lot of us who have played any sort of sport, high school sport, junior high, whatever you're able to do, equivocate effort with just like running back and trying. And that is a big part of it. But if you actually watch the most recent clip that went viral of like what Will Hardy was complaining about, they're mental mistakes of executing a game plan. And a lot of this effort stuff is when like if you're a defender, sometimes you're exhausted, whatever. If you have dead legs on a closeout, but you're trying or whatever, sometimes like that's what we as fans gravitate towards. We see a guy who's doing a lazy closeout. What the coaches are looking for is to say, if your legs are tired and you're slower and you're getting whacked by a screen, like we're going to work on that. But if you are not doing the correct movement on defense, that means I can tell your head isn't thinking. And there's so many times that a player like Bryce Sensabaugh or Kyle Filipowski, they're just not doing the basic defensive decision. Not a lazy closeout or they look unathletic on defense or something like that, or they just hand waved a guy. It's that they're just making extreme mental mistakes, and that is indicative to a coaching staff of effort in a different way. That's where with this Bryce Sensabaugh shooting thing, I see him going back, and I still see him like got his head to the sky, looking at like what's wrong with me, and then he takes a wrong foot on a man he's supposed to be guarding on the back door, and he's not expecting anything, and that's something that they worked on shoot around just that morning. That's the sort of what he means by effort. Like, do you care to be out there?
Applying, I don't think, I think it's easy for like, everyday Jazz fans, like not like people who don't obsess and watch film and break down, like the ability to implement what was on the clipboard in a huddle is an NBA skill, just like shooting, just like athleticism, just like, a knack for the ball or court vision. Like that is itself a skill. And it is possible, I try to be growth mindset about this. Like it is possible to develop that skill. It's also possible to have other skills that should make you an NBA player, but because that's not there, it's just hard for a coach to trust you. And I think that's kind of what's happening with Bryce, and maybe what's happening too with Taylor. I know you wanted to talk about Taylor,
Well, let me get in. You mentioned Svi first. I want to get into Svi because I think Svi might be the player that I am most wrong about. I was emphatic in our preseason talks that I didn't want to see any Svi Mykhailiuk, in part because I felt like the depth chart didn't warrant it. I felt like Bryce Sensabaugh and Ace Bailey clearly come ahead. Keontae George, Isaiah Collier, Walt Clayton, like they all come clearly ahead of him. I underestimated completely two things. Well, a number of things really, but I'm going to point out two in particular. One, Svi Mykhailiuk is a credible, not good, but he's a credible player to have out there with two smaller guards. You don't really want him guarding actual NBA small forwards, but his level of intensity and execution of basic defensive principles means you can at least trust a medium-sized body out there. So I completely underestimated his ability to kind of play up a position a little bit. Maybe not on a good team, but for this Utah Jazz team. And the second part is building on what I just said is he is really, really, really executing out there as far as never really in the wrong spot, offensively, defensively, and a big complaint that every stop he's had, Boston, Detroit, wherever he's been, has been, all right, this guy's coming off the bench and his eyes are going to go black and he's going to shoot the ever-loving piss out of the ball because this is his one shot to lose. And he will go entire stretches with just swinging the ball side to side, not being a ball hog in any respect. And it's perfect guy to have out there. Good three-point shooter, good executor, and I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I've seen some of the Twitter commentary, including by yourself, of some things. And another part of what I underestimated and what I've really appreciated of Mykhailiuk, and this leads into why I was so wrong about Kyle Anderson, is Svi Mykhailiuk helps the other four players on the court. His presence helps them. So a lot of people are saying, like, well, why is Svi Mykhailiuk getting 25 minutes and Bryce Sensabaugh is only getting 12? So, and they're saying, like, this is hurting Bryce. This hurts Bryce's development not being out there. And I think of it as Svi being out there is helping Keontae, who's out there. Svi being out there is helping Walt Clayton, who's out there. He's helping Ace Bailey, who's out there. He's helping Kyle Filipowski, who's out there. If Bryce Sensabaugh is in Svi's spot, those other three players are suffering in their development curve because they got a guy out there who's screwing up all the time. So do you care about those other three players being out there, or do you care that Bryce is just getting minutes? So I think a lot of fans underestimate that it's not just one for one we're hurting Bryce. I think you have to think about, well, who's really having great seasons, or who do we prioritize as an organization? Right now, I'm prioritizing like an Ace Bailey, making sure that Ace Bailey's playing on lineups that always consistently make sense. And if Ace Bailey's playing on a defense where three of the other four teammates he's got out there are really messing up all the time, or an offense that has no structure, that hurts Ace Bailey. And I think that is lost on a lot of things. So been very appreciative of Svi after I was very emphatic in the early before the season to say I didn't want to see him out there. And now I'm looking at his contract thinking like, I don't know, I kind of like him.
Yeah, I didn't put this on my things I was right about list because it's pretty minor, but I remember you and I quibbled a little bit about whether Svi or Kyle Anderson would get more roles as kind of a wing who can do a little bit of pick and roll and stuff like that. And I just thought there was a little bit more utility in Svi. I think, I don't want to overdo it on Svi, but one of the things I said in Salt City 7 on Monday is, or whenever I posted it, I think I posted it late this week, is he also just helps lineups make sense. Like anyone else you could post with those other that you could start with those other four guys in the starting lineup would make the starting lineup incredibly flawed in one way or another. It would either be, Taylor Hendricks, and then you don't have quite enough creation juice, or it would be Bryce Sensabaugh, and then you have like all minus defenders on the floor, or neutral to minus defenders on the floor. So I think Svi just kind of holds things together for now. I still don't necessarily view him as like a long-term piece. But yeah, you have said all along, you've done a good job in these podcasts of explaining to people that, like, if the guys are just out there playing pickup ball, there is not really developmental value in that. Like, you still want to step out on the court and play like a professional basketball team so the guys can understand and grow in that context. And I think Svi helps them do that. So I'm not mad at all about the Svi minutes. I was, again, I'm the guy who said on opening night, everybody chillax, he's going to play 18 minutes and then, we'll never see him again. And I was clearly wrong about that. But seeing how just kind of solid and steady he's been, it's hard to be mad about that.
Another point I wanted to make, if you're 25 minutes into this podcast, hopefully you're going to listen to the whole thing and everything. But one point that I really want to be emphatic about with the season and in this particular episode that we're doing is, oh my God, this season is forever. And there are going to be so many games left to play, including dozens of games where Bryce Sensabaugh is going to get minutes because he is the best option out. Like, there's going to be plenty of quote unquote, maybe not pickup ball level out there, but it's going to be, there's going to be plenty of opportunity. Lauri Markkanen's only missed one game due to an illness. He looked entirely healthy. These tables are going to turn pretty soon on that part. Kyle Anderson, I just want to also mention, because I'm thinking about it, where I was super wrong on Kyle Anderson is, he can pass the ball, but I think he's the biggest ball hog on the team right now. I think it's pretty incredible how much he calls his own number when he's out there, and not with dwindling shot clocks or anything. I think he wants to play like this pick and roll basketball player instead of a facilitator, and maybe I haven't watched him enough in the past 3 or 4 years, but I've been profoundly disappointed that he's not connective tissue and he is kind of dribble the air out of the basketball. I've been kind of annoyed at his minutes, and I thought I'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's about as much time as I want to spend. I mean, Kyle Anderson. Look, Kyle Anderson is last on the regular roster, not counting two-way guys and not counting Georges Niang, who's injured. Kyle Anderson is last in minutes played, and that's kind of what I expected and hoped to see. I think he's here to play when other guys are hurt, injured, resting, foul trouble, whatever. But I do want to get to Taylor Hendricks, who has been another just like, damn, dude, I like this was looking in the preseason like it might be fun, like it might be an awesome narrative to the Jazz's season, his bounce back from injury, and instead we're talking about a guy who's value above replacement is 0. We're talking about a guy whose scoring averages 5 points a game. He's making, I guess, an okay-ish number of threes. Mostly the issue with Taylor. Well, I'll let you do Taylor, because Taylor was on your list.
So I want to see games where, even at a minimum, and maybe this is just overcoaching, maybe he's overthinking it or whatever, but as a player who comes into the Jazz touted as, oh, he's just a toolsy athlete, and we're just going to try to make things happen. I want more chaos agent energy. I want him doing random things out there. And he's not rebounding, he's not getting steals, and he's not getting blocks. He's not getting the deflections, right? Like these are all things where I just want chaos agent Taylor Hendricks and then run to the corners and shoot around the perimeter. And with the Utah's offensive rebounding style, like get up there and do some crazy offensive rebounds. And if you end up getting yelled at the next game because you had a horrible game and you did 93 things that you weren't supposed to do, but the very next game you were able to harness like the things you were supposed to do versus some areas where you could identify some chaos agent activity. I understand the confidence in his own body and the confidence in his athleticism may not fully be there. I'm willing to be patient with that. And in fact, I want to be clear that my disappointment in Taylor Hendricks is not like that of a Cody Williams where I'm like, this is looking horrible and I'm going to give up. This is more of a, okay, you deserve the right for me to be patient, going into next season. But I was hoping to see more. Fans remember Jared Vanderbilt, right? And I think Jared Vanderbilt's defense was horrible, but he did some chaos agent stuff out there that made you think, oh, this might be a player to see if we can coach around this and get better. And it turns out Jared Vanderbilt has never gotten better now that he's on the Lakers. I want to see more of that. And it doesn't even, he almost has like the Cody Williams illness of being invisible sometimes, and that's not the
Yeah.
player they drafted. Cody Williams in college was also had his moments of invisibility. Taylor Hendricks was never an invisible player, and it sort of feels like that now.
Invisible was actually the word I was going to use before I realized I was totally stealing your thunder. Um, yeah, it's been rough with Taylor. I mean, he's 11th in minutes played. Kevin Love is playing more minutes with him, which obviously, that's largely due to the Walker Kessler injury. Nobody, including Kevin Love, thought Kevin Love would be playing this many minutes. And while I'm saying those two names in the same sentence, let me just do a quick little Taylor Hendricks myth busting moment, not for you, but for the good people out there in internet land. Stop asking for Taylor Hendricks at center minutes. It's not going to happen. The Jazz are not interested in developing Taylor Hendricks at center at this point in his career. The Jazz like Taylor Hendricks specifically because he is what he is, as sort of a rangy wing, like he's Bizarro World Lauri Markkanen. He's a 6'11" 3 guy, just with completely opposite strengths and weaknesses to Lauri Markkanen. But anyway, that's all I'll say about that. Yeah, I do get the line of thinking that, it's hard to be a chaos agent when you are also just trying to make sure that that your legs will move in the proper fashion again after a big injury, and that it'll be hard to judge him on anything more than just kind of being out there and going through the motions until he's been back for a little bit of time. What makes it harder to sort of buy that explanation or that kind of give him that sort of pass is that this guy appeared like he was on track to start when the season was, when the preseason was getting close to ending. It looked like Taylor Hendricks might be the Jazz's starting 3/4. And so to go from that to now suddenly they can barely use him. He's gotten more minutes for the Stars than for the Jazz. Not literally, but lately for sure.
And hasn't dominated in the G
bad.
League, right? And it hasn't been 25 point, 12 rebound games for the Stars either.
Well, we're a half hour in, and we've so far answered one question. Do we want to do a couple minutes on Keyonte George before we move on to what we were right about?
Well, I think if anything, we should go from negative to positive. We've been negative on everything that we were very wrong about, and we have a spirit of malaise. Although Svi is more of a positive, but it's more of a Svi over. Okay, so Bryce hasn't improved. So there's some Svi is a loaded thing in Jazzland, I think. Even though we feel okay.
Svi is like. Svi is like, I'm gonna do my best Bill Simmons impression. I'm gonna do a random metaphor that also involves gambling. Svi is like, you got your ass kicked at the blackjack table, so you just went to play penny slots for a while, and you won like $90 at the penny slots. Like, it's found money, but it's found money in a way that's probably not that consequential in the long run. But still give him credit, and like I said, he's holding a lineup together that without him, probably in one way or another, wouldn't make a lot of sense. Keyonte George has been a positive surprise. Shooting still not super duper there. Defense still not super duper there. But in every other way, I think he just looks more comfortable. He's got the ball enough now that he's going to score 20 almost every time he plays, just because. And people said to me a week or two ago when I was talking about Key, they were like, what do you mean, Dan? He's playing the same number of minutes. Yeah, the minutes were there even before the Jazz got rid of Sexton and Clarkson. But playing 32 minutes and running 20 pick and rolls is not the same as playing 32 minutes but running 60 pick and rolls and being the guy that has to initiate the offense every time down, or else the offense is in trouble. And because that's Keyonte's role now, he's gonna find his way to buckets. He looks smarter. He looks more mature. He looks more under control. I think I still have some questions about sort of the long term with Ian Markkanen. If you look at sort of the net ratings of the two together, and compare that to Lowry's on, Key is off, and compare that to Key is on, Lowry's off, I still think there are some things there that maybe say I'd wait before I declared this the 2/3 or 2/5 of the future playoff Jazz starting lineup. And we can talk about that math if you want, but it's kind of ugly. So I still have questions about that, but it's hard to not be impressed with just how different Key looks as a player and as a leader.
Yeah, let me be very cold and calculated about Keontae. Keontae has gone from a player that very, very, very few teams in the NBA would be interested in, even on like a rookie scale contract. More of like, Utah, that's your problem. We'll let you take him to restricted free agency. Maybe something will happen. We're not really interested in, based on what he's done over the first 2 years, maybe a throw in as part of a random transaction, but nobody in the NBA is really interested in him. He's now played his way into a player that a lot of NBA teams are laser focused on. Who is this guy and what is he going to become? Now, to the Jazz, be great if he can continue his improvement and he does become a mainstay starter. But to have at least improved his value, if I'm being like a neutral armchair GM about this, he has improved his value to being a net positive asset. And that is like a huge, huge change for him. And I will continue to bring it up because I remember my exact words, which was I closed the book on Keontae before the season and I locked it, but I didn't throw away the key. And
you found the key,
and I found the key, and it's open. And this is a player I want. Maybe we'll get into this in a later question, but Keontae George brings me joy. And the first 2 seasons, oh my God, he did not bring me joy. And so he's turned into a player that, especially getting into fourth quarters and everything, I'm starting to get like a little bit of trust that when he's taking some of these shots and in making in his decisions, I'm like, I'm pretty sure Keontae's going to do the right thing in the clutch. And I don't have his clutch stats in front of me, but I have this weird trust in him now, him and Markkanen, as far as like executing some of like the basic things that they're trying to do. And so now I'm just interested in seeing where this goes the rest of the season, especially once we start losing Markkanen for games, because that's going to happen, right? And so that's going to be very critical for Keontae. But just even if so I think his shooting is drastically improved over the past couple of weeks. Let's see how the whole season goes. I have confidence in the shot. Like, it's just I really don't mind his shooting profile right now. I think it's fine. The percentages look at what they are because of a weird start to the season. But I was having this conversation about Lauri Markkanen last year. I'm not saying, okay, Keontae George is going to be as efficient as Lauri Markkanen, but I was panicking about Lauri's efficiency at this point. Like, he was shooting 50% at the rim or something like that last year, Lauri was. So we'll have a whole season of getting there. And before I lose my train of thought too much, it's just... Oh, and his defense. His defense, I think, has gone from F-, to F+, where he's executing the basic things. He's slow on closeouts. He gets smacked by screens all the time. But he's making correct decisions, and I just love a little Chaos Agent energy. He's coming in from like 15 feet away, poking balls out of big men's hands. And I'm like, that's not... Usually when Keontae went on defense, he was trying to expend as little energy as possible. And that's not the same player this year.
So a couple quick thoughts. You mentioned you wished you had his clutch shooting in front of you. I do. His clutch shooting stats, shooting splits are 40, which is a little lower than his general field goal percentage, 37.5, which is higher, much higher than his regular three-point shooting, and then 91% free throw shooting in the clutch. So, he's actually probably a better and more efficient guy with the ball in his hands in clutch situations. The other thing I've always watched with Keontae George is pull-up shooting versus catch-and-shoot shooting. He is not a good pull-up outside shooter, and I think that matters if he's someone who's going to have the ball in his hands. And again, if you're gonna run 50 or 60 pick and rolls a game with the ball in Keontae George's hands, it kind of matters that he's only a 26% pull-up shooter. Having said that, like you, I think now when he's controlling the offense does feel more under control than it did last year. His pace just bugged the crap out of me last year. Just too many times that he would get the ball kind of late in the shot clock, dribble, back it out. There's 11, there's 10, there's 9. He's still dribbling. He's not even calling for the pick yet. 8, 7, he finally advanced. Like, there are just a lot of times, and I don't think he sort of played the way you want a floor general to play. That kind of stuff is improving. Real quick, I'll give you the stats because I have them here. When Lowry and Keontae are on the floor together, the net rating so far this year has been negative 5.6. I don't care about that number. I'm not worried about that number. That's the net rating of a team that is in the Jazz's place in the standings. That's reflective of the rest of their roster and what they're doing from a rebuild standpoint. And I'm not panicking that together they're at a negative 5.6. What is interesting is that Lowry without Keontae on the floor, the Jazz's net rating is minus 1.1. So they're basically playing like a 500 team, like a 39-40 win team, with just Markkanen on the floor, and with just Keontae on the floor, their net rating outside of garbage time rather, is minus 25 per 100 possessions. That to me is a little bit like, hey, maybe we should wait before we crown him the starting point guard of the next Jazz playoff team. But obviously, the other thing I'll say about that is lineup data is not predictive. It is descriptive. Lineup data changes all the time. The Jazz could go out and face a team that is missing a starter, and that'll skew the stats and whatever. And like literally, we could run these stats again on Monday, and they could say something pretty different. So, but for now,
and to that point, the team is a little better with Lowry. Just having Lowry out there, and I think it does get a little bit better with Keontae off and Lowry on. So it's not like Keontae is like a super positive player right now, but coming from where we were in the preseason, it's like, okay, now I'm intrigued. We now have a positive asset where we didn't before, and at the end of the day, man, he's bringing me happiness and a season that is, with a lot of losses, you need to find it somewhere.
All right, take a victory lap. What's your first thing that you were right about that wasn't obvious, but Mark Pereira had it all along?
I'm going to go with Ace Bailey's made of the right stuff. So this will have to be a victory half lap, because I think I was going into the season, especially without any knee issues or the illness that kept Ace Bailey from starting game 1. I really thought he was going to come out guns blazing, and watching Con Knipple and watching VJ Edgecombe gives me a little bit of grief, where I'm like, oh man, I really think that Ace Bailey could be an 18 point per game guy. Like give him more opportunity. But what I was absolutely right about, and this isn't just like a random prediction, it comes from watching his brief summer league performances and brief preseason performances, was that this is not the same player we watched at Rutgers. This guy was way more toolsy and has way more between the ears than what he showed at Rutgers, for a Rutgers team that wasn't really trying ever, right? And I've been wildly impressed that this is a future pros pro, and I think you would be a fool not to consider him a future All-NBA talent still, just because, the points per game aren't there, or the minutes aren't there. This has all of the makings of a player who has it all figured out. And they're giving him little doses of responsibility every week, little new things every single week. The game got away from them way too early, but I was kind of hoping without Lowry Markkanen, we would see a lot more Ace Bailey type of things in the last game, taking the place of Lowry, and that didn't really happen so much. But again, the game kind of got away from them as a whole. I was right. He's good. We should, and he's a great personality. Love having him around. It's a small little victory lap, because I think a lot of my good predictions, I don't think came out of nowhere. And maybe I'm forgetting a crazy one that I made that I nailed. But Ace Bailey having the whole package, not just being a ball hog, I nailed it.
Yeah, I think I think something you and I both kind of got right about Ace is just that, like, there was going to be a trajectory with him. I for one love what how the Jazz are kind of managing his diet, so to speak. If he were on the Wizards, he'd be taking 19 shots a night, and I don't know that would be really great for his long term. I'm not going to do the Oreo thing or whatever, the over dipped Oreos or whatever, but I do just think that them bringing him along as a system player is a philosophical choice that might yield a more sophisticated year 2 Ace Bailey, or even a more sophisticated second half of year 1 Ace Bailey. So I'm with you on this one. I have some, but have we sufficiently explored the Ace Bailey topic?
I think we've sufficiently explored Ace Bailey, and as far as anything else I'm correct about, it's just going to be more downer shit, like about people like Cody Williams that I don't really feel like being right about quite yet. So what do you got?
Yeah, Cody, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't plan on talking about Cody tonight.
And we won't. Move on.
Okay, we won't. I wanted to. Okay, we'll leave Cody to the side. Again, these are less like bold predictions that came true, and more just like things that I was thinking 2 months ago that I was pretty sure I was right about, and it turns out I was mostly right about. One is Flip being I'm going to do these rapid fire because I don't think any of them are like huge things, but Flip being a 4, Kyle Filipowski being a 4. It was obvious in Summer League and preseason that the Jazz are mostly interested now in developing Kyle Filipowski as a power forward. So much so that even now on nights when he's one of only 2 centers playing, they're like, screw it, and we'll play Kyle Anderson as the center. Kyle Anderson is playing backup center for the Jazz. He might, I don't care what BREF says his positional definition for those minutes is because he's the 3rd tallest player or whatever. If you watch his role in the offense on the nights when Kevin Love is resting, Kyle Anderson is the backup center so that Flip can stay at the 4. That's obviously what the Jazz think his NBA future is. I was also right about Walt Clayton Jr. is just a hard guy to keep off the floor. And because of that, the Jazz do have a guard minute crunch. And it's something I kind of saw coming. We'll talk about Walt later. The big thing for me is I spent all last year just begging people to just not pay attention to Lauri Markkanen's stats at all. He had like an 18, 19 point per game season because the Jazz not only didn't care about the outcomes, but they also had kind of like seen what they needed to see from Lauri Markkanen at that point. So they were basically just using him in like weird ways. He wasn't even like central to the offensive execution. He basically was just told, look, if you catch the ball, we want you to shoot threes. Last season, I mean. This season, they're back to like using him creatively, putting him at the hub of the offense in really unique and creative ways. I don't know if Will Hardy is getting enough credit for designing a whole offense around his best player being a guy who does his best work before he catches the ball. It's fascinating how their offense is structured around what makes Lauri special. Even though they're not like super duper trying to win games still, I was not worried about Lauri. And I think Lauri has come back and just has further evolved as a guy who, like, we've talked about it on podcasts before. I've written about it. You've podcasted and referenced my writing about it. Like, we've done it. But just this idea that, like, he is a hub of the offense and he is the guy making decisions and making reads just sometimes without ever touching the leather. And I think that's really fascinating. And it's why I really did not care what his 3-point percentage was last season.
So the dunks are back. I love that Brooklyn game because
and the dunks are back.
Like had 8 dunks that game. It just like Dan is signaling 6 for our audio only friends.
Officially it went down to 6 in that game.
Yeah, it just was nonstop. And sure, Brooklyn is Brooklyn, but they had Nick Claxton and Noah Clowney out there who are like they are bodies that can ostensibly match up with him a little bit as far as chasing him around. And I think they have a good coaching system around there. I actually don't think Brooklyn is as awful as people think. Like Brooklyn is, they didn't have Michael Porter Jr. that game, or Cam Thomas, but Cam Thomas might be a net negative player. But like they were kind of feisty, and like the Utah ran over them. I was pretty impressed by a lot of things. The amount of times we're watching Lowry get the ball and everyone stands still, like that doesn't happen anymore this year, and that happened all the time last year, and so unfair to Lowry. And that's not even how Team Finland used him in Eurobasket. Team Finland, yeah, there were a lot of possessions that Finland did just toss the ball to Lowry and hope for things, but they always try to initiate offense by some other player. And if Lowry ever got the ball and things stopped, it was as a result of him getting a mismatch that he was then going to try to take advantage of. Whereas last year, a lot of the offense was, especially as more and more players left the lineup, like John Collins and Jordan Clarkson, it became our only hope for this offense is Lowry exploring the space that he's in, and it's February, and who cares? And I will always admit when I'm like super wrong about things. I just didn't feel his mental energy and his emotion last year, and I was worried that I was gonna kind of poison the well for the upcoming season. He was on a watch list for me this year as far as what is his emotional attitude this year, and his physical energy, and his like, does he look healthy? And it's hard to watch on TV sometimes, but like I think it's just so readily apparent that he's full of joy and glow and athleticism, and he really, really, really cares and has a lot of FU energy out there that we saw in the 2 years prior. Like, this is all NBA. I'm here and I'm here to stay. Like, I deserve this contract. I don't know what's motivating him. I think the team is just happier this year, and he seems like kind of a motivated by, do I like going to work kind of guy. And I think he's got it back this year. So it's been fun.
I mean, I think he's the player. When we talk about the Jazz putting their thumb on the scale last season, he was the player that kind of had to like artificially limit. And then this year, they designed the roster in a way that it doesn't matter if he averages 30. He can average 30 and the Jazz will still not surpass 27 wins or whatever. So maybe that's it. But really, I think what it comes down to is just that he is featured again. He is the feature of the Jazz offense. When he's on the court, every trip is about him, even when it's not. Offensive trips are about him where he never touches the ball. There were 2 plays I highlighted in the Salt City 7 this week where Lowry gets off the ball almost the second he touches it because he recognizes how the play is developing, and then he eventually gets it back and makes wide open threes. He is a special player. I agree with you. He's probably having, by almost any objective measure, a better season than his All-Star season, a better season than the season where he ended 17th in voting for 15 All-NBA slots. I don't know if he'll make All-Star team. I have a thing written. It's not posted yet. I think it'll be tough. Although, sidebar, just some things that are bugging me about that discussion. Like, I don't know, like, after tonight's loss, Portland is now officially only percentage points ahead of Utah. I don't know why people are talking about Denny Avdia at 25, 6, and 7. Like, he has to go. Like, he's an automatic all-star. And then just saying, like, oh, shucks, Larry Markkanen's not going to make it because we got to put Denny Avdia on. I'm not sure why people are talking. I don't know. I think that there are some selective, for that matter, Zach Lowe, who I love. Zach Lowe is probably my favorite NBA commentator ever, analyst ever. And today he did this whole thing about how, like, oh, we should create an extra all-star roster spot so that Steven fucking Adams can be an all-star. And in the same breath says, oh, but sorry, Larry Markkinen, there's just not room for you. I think it's a little weird. Larry Markkinen, to me, is doing absolute all-star things. No one ever in the history of the NBA up till now has averaged 27 points per game on 60% or above true shooting and not made the all-star team that season. Let's not overthink this. I do think he should be an all-star. And sadly, I think it's probably like 20% or below that he will actually make it because of all these weird false narratives that were just like, oh, Portland's going to, like, Phoenix has to get Devin Booker in because they have kind of like a fake record propped up by an easy schedule. I love Devin Booker. I'm not I love Denny Avdia too. The Jazz love Denny Avdia. The Jazz have looked at Denny Avdia in previous transaction cycles as someone they would have been open to bringing in. So anyway, not trying to crap on anybody. The short version is guys who have done what Lauri Markkanen is right now doing have been all-stars literally in the entirety of NBA history.
And I think when the coaches vote comes down to it, they're going to be considering things like, oh, who's the player that we have to game plan for every time? And like the Jazz come up and it's like, oh my God, we have to deal with Lauri Markkanen for 4 quarters. Like he's such a problem for everyone right now. And it's almost kind of funny because like the defense will do exactly what they're told to do, and the Jazz will figure out some way to spring Markkanen loose where it's not like he's just like sprinting around screens getting wide open shots. It's just they'll design ways where he gets a ball on an angle against somebody and they'll say like Lauri Markkanen is better than that player. It's not a mismatch, but he now has the ball where he wants it. He doesn't even have to dribble. He's going to dunk over you, or he's going to take one dribble and a pivot and a hook shot. He's got an arsenal of things. He's got every tool in the toolbook that doesn't except dribble from a standstill. He does a lot of dribbling. I think a lot of people underrate that he still does dribble a lot. It's just usually after a moving catch. He's not asked to dribble from a stand. He's not a triple threat guy, and that's the difference. So that
Brooklyn game you mentioned, there was a lot of like second side attacking in his game. So he's not just catch and shoot anymore. But yeah, you're right. He's also not like, let's just dump it to him in the elbows and let him figure it out. And that's okay if he never is that. But anyway, that also, my whole little Andre, sorry, I'm switching white European Jazz guys mentally for a minute.
Again, it's the Nutcracker. You're looking at the Nutcracker up here. He's here.
That rant was also unplanned, but it's been in my bloodstream because I've been writing this all-star piece. And as I was writing it, I was just trying to calibrate and listen to what other smart people who I like and whose analysis I value, what they were saying about the All-Star race. And it's like, oh, well, we have to put Austin Reeves on. And again, I like Austin Reeves. The Lakers are good. Maybe they should have 3 guys on there. But, we have to put Austin Reeves on the All-Star team because he's averaging an efficient 28. Well, so is Lauri, and Lauri's doing it as a first option, not as a second or third option. So anyway, I
will briefly say that I have found myself, because I don't like to listen to podcasts too late. Like I like to listen to things when they're topical. I will find myself going a week without having caught the last few Zach Lowe shows and not missing it. I've struggled on some of his most recent commentary. And I think there are. I'll just leave it at that. I've been kind of perturbed by him lately.
I think, yeah, that's still one of my all-time favorites. I think Ringer Zach Lowe is a slightly different personality than ESPN Zach Lowe, probably by design.
Yes.
And so, well, so the next question. You take this one because I think this question has Mark Pereira all over it. Your last podcast, you talked about this at length. Just how happy are you? How much fun are you having with this Jazz season?
Yeah, and as always, when the two of us get together, we have a number of topics that perhaps we'd love to get into. I'm going to try to mash in a couple of our later topics into this wider thing of how happy I am. It's an 8 out of 10. Like I just walk into every game happy right now. And that could probably change as the season goes on. We don't have Lauri Markkanen. Markkanen misses the All-Star team and I'm grumpy about everything. We'll see. But right now I go into every Jazz game with enthusiasm for what could happen and knowing that we're right around the corner from Bryce Sensabaugh figuring it out. I can't wait to see what Ace Bailey's doing every single game. Keontae, I know, is not going to absolutely infuriate me every game. And in fact, he'll have infuriating quarters still, but still will kind of come back. And his perseverance through bad performances is also pretty. And obviously, from game to game, it's important. Having the worst performance of any basketball player in this season against Houston. with his 6 turnovers and missing all of his shots. Admittedly, he was sick that game. To the night after having an A-plus Keontae George game, that's perseverance.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool. I know I can go into every game thinking, well, it's more likely than not Keontae George is going to infuriate me. I don't feel like that anymore. And so this would be a 9 if Walker Kessler was here. I think we saw so much, oh my God, what's happening with Walker Kessler in the first couple games. And for us to now lose him for an entire season puts a weird sour note, especially on the heels of what seems to be consternation about his contract situation. I really, as a fan of a small market basketball team, I want all the players to feel like, oh, I like the Utah Jazz. I like being here. And right now, with that contract issue into the injury, I just hope that Walker doesn't feel like the fans aren't in his corner and that we really want him here. And I think his fit in Utah is better than almost any other place in the league, like playing alongside Lauri Markkanen. Like, this works, man. Hopefully it figures it out. So I would be a lot happier if we still had his joyous presence and the improvement that we've seen from him. But just the fact that I can go in every game not expecting a win, but just unlike last year, I go in every game this year thinking I'm going to see a young player or multiple young players do something, and also our all-star is kicking everyone's ass, and it just you get joy, and the tickets are worth paying for. I got my usual seats against the Nuggets in a couple weeks, so as you're watching behind the Jazz bench, you'll see me in a garish outfit, and I'll report back about Will Hardy's aggressive coaching style. Or the like, but it just seems like the team also likes being around each other and everything. And despite Will Hardy's coaching style, they all still love him. And we're gonna see Ace Bailey and Walt Clayton show some things. We're gonna see probably a lot more capital P point guard Walt Clayton as the season goes on. We're probably going to be putting the ball in Ace Bailey's hands a little bit more because they are giving Ace Bailey a little bit more responsibility every week. So those are the things I'm looking forward to. I got things to be happy about. This is an 8 out of 10 season for me.
You mentioned your Denver seats, where the Clayton brothers are contemplating a little Texas two-step in January. So we'll see if that works out. We've done Houston. We've done a road game in Houston. We were actually there for Lauri Markkanen's 49, his career high. Up to that point, now obviously he's dropped a 50 burger. We might go complete the Texas Triangle and see games in Dallas and San Antonio over MLK weekend. We'll see if that works out. I'm in the same boat. I think there are a couple of different ways that I get joy from the Utah Jazz. One is, when they're good and when I'm watching them through the lens of like, oh, how are they going to respond to this high pressure situation? And, how's the Don and Rudy pick and roll going to work against the Memphis Grizzlies in a first round? Like, that's a different kind of fun. The kind of fun I have in these seasons is just like the curiosity of like, man, what's going to happen when, you're running Walt Clayton, Kyle Anderson pick and rolls with Kyle Filipowski spacing in the corner and Bryce Sensabaugh cutting. Like, that's just, I like last year, the last couple years, I think so many of the minutes were going to guys that we just weren't curious about. Like, we knew what Colin Sexton was. We knew what Jordan Clarkson was. We knew what John Collins was. I also get why they had to play. I get why the rotation was what it was. Same way that I get why Nurk and Svi Mikhailuk and Kevin Love and to some extent Kyle Anderson are playing this year. Like, I get it, but like so much of the Jazz's identity last year was framed through these guys who just didn't inspire the same amount of intellectual curiosity. And we get to go into every game this season kind of in discovery mode. So I was going to say the same. My number was 7.5 just because I think it's higher to go. It's hard to go higher than that in a season where they're, probably going to lose 55 games. But I, from a sheer just curiosity standpoint and learning standpoint and fact finding standpoint, I actually kind of love rebuilding eras because it's this like thought exercise and yet like there's no pressure or expectations. Like my mood is not changed at all when they lose a game versus like in early 2022 my mood sucked when the Jazz lost. Now I don't. It doesn't matter if they lose, and I get to find out things in the process either way. In fact, a lot of fans get angry when they win these days, but that's another topic, and we've also covered that one a lot.
I follow a lot of fans. My favorite type of people to follow on social media are not necessarily the beat reporters of other teams, but like fans that I know live post through every game. And so maybe they don't have the smartest insights or whatever. I certainly don't when I'm giving my live reactions. But these people who love their team and post about it a lot, and I follow a lot of Hawks people, and they hate Quinn Snyder so much with some of his tactical decisions, and it kind of makes you wistful for like when I used to get so annoyed at various aspects of like the team structured defense or something, but also reminiscing about the ways he unlocked players that other coaches wouldn't, and those sorts of things. So that my 8 out of 10 is gonna drop to a 6 or 5 towards the end of the year. Once if we don't get anything from Taylor Hendricks, like if we don't get anything from Taylor the whole year, it's gonna drop because that's gonna feel like another huge waste of a draft pick. When like if you're gonna trade Rudy and Don and Boyan and Mike Conley and everything, like you have to hit on your draft picks in a way of like they can't be zeros. They need to at least be like net neutral assets that you can trade on a rookie contract or something, right? Or you give them an extension. They can't become Zeke Naji extensions, right? Like for those that don't know, Zeke Naji is being paid a lot of money to do nothing right now for the Denver Nuggets. Like those types of things, they're critical mistakes. Now, a team like the Nuggets, whatever, they don't care. Like they're okay. Hurts their luxury tax payments, but they don't need Naji to play. Utah needs Taylor Hendricks to play. My feeling of happiness will go down if Bryce Sensabaugh doesn't figure it out. There are things that right now I'm looking at the last 60 games thinking like, oh my God, we have 2/3 of the season left for a lot of these things to work themselves out for very young basketball players. So I don't have a whole lot of like capital C concern. My happiness right now is based on intrigue, as you're noting, and the positive things we've seen from Lowry, Keontae, Walker when we saw him, Ace Bailey, Walt Clayton looks like he's got it. Isaiah Collier, I still think I'm on the higher end of him because I love watching the stupid things he does. He does some amazing point guard things, and he does very almost hilariously stupid things out there that are just like, if you ever lose those things, you're gonna be a decent backup point guard. But right now, he's kind of like he's a good tank commander in the way of like he's fun to watch and does enough stupid things to help lose basketball games. So they just give me joy right now. But if we get to a point in the season where our only bright spot has been Keontae and Lowry and a little bit of Ace, like that'll feel like an average season. Not a below average season, but more of like okay, that was kind of nice, but we really had some disappointments out there that we have to sweep under the rug.
Yeah, I mean, the Jazz's rebuild really hits the next gear. Number one, if they get a good draft pick this year. And then if like two of those other guys, like right now the Jazz have 9 recent draftees on their roster. And I would say Walker Kessler, we can already confidently say is NBA quality. And I'd say Keontae is now also putting himself in the map of like, at the very least, he's going to be a good bench scoring guard for the next 12 NBA seasons or whatever. So there's 7 guys left who are like recent draftees who've like shown some stuff, but also none of them is like definitely a rotation caliber player on a playoff team. And I think really for the rebuild to start to inch towards its next phase, you need like 2 or 3 of those guys to start to pan out. And so that's why I think I agree with you that like, Cody Williams is not looking great right now in terms of if he's going to be one of those 7 guys who turns the corner. Taylor Hendricks, it hasn't looked great so far. Flip, I mean, he's in the rotation. Bryce Sensabaugh, he's usually in the rotate. Like, there are some possibilities in that group of 7, but I think that's kind of mostly now what the rest of the season becomes about, is Ace's continued development, and then how many of those other 7 guys are like, are real. Yeah, I'll pause there.
No, I think
before I barrel on to the next thing.
we've gone on about so many different topics about like what we felt for this first third of the season, and I I every trade deadline with the Angels is interesting, and we certainly don't have the time to go into it now, but based on what we've seen from the young players and going into this offseason with cap space, this is going to, I think, what is going to be very underrated is how active the Jazz are going to look to be in this trade deadline of like, okay, we got to start congealing some assets here, or perhaps jettisoning some flotsam, and the Cody Williams could and players like Taylor Hendricks could end up not being Jazzmen if they don't show some reason to keep them around on their relatively high rookie salaries, right? Like there's some things to really consider. I'm not suggesting that they get traded, but like it's like they absolutely will get traded. You don't necessarily trade everyone at their when their value is at their lowest, but at some point the Jazz are going to have to turn into like a congealing into a actual professional basketball team now that the draft pick is not going to be constrained starting next year. So I just walk into every game having a little bit of optimism. But I'm also watching these G League stats, and I have to pull up the G League film from these things to see like Cody Williams scored 4 points for the Stars in 20 minutes the other night, and it's like
Yeah.
okay, that wasn't a foul trouble. I know it's like he's only playing 20 minutes to play 20 minutes, but there's not a whole lot of optimism there. And so Taylor Hendricks is the guy that's more of a catalyst of like, what could he become? Because we've seen some things from
Sure.
Taylor. And that's what is more of like a weird thing for us right now.
So I'm going to respond quickly to your trade comment with something that might come across more provocatively than I mean it. I actually think it'd be really hard to trade Taylor Hendricks or Cody Williams right now. I think what gets interesting about the trade deadline, and again, we'll have a lot more words to say and write about the trade deadline between now and February. I think what gets interesting is, I think maybe some of the guys who have played their way into like, oh, that guy's kind of looking interesting now. I think that might be a more interesting conversation at the trade deadline. Is have some guys played their way into where 29 other teams give a shit and will answer the phone when it rings? Because I don't think anyone's answering the Cody Williams phone right now.
No, I only mean so there. Let me extrapolate this because I can't help myself, Daniel. When I mention Taylor Hendricks and Cody Williams as trade possibilities, I certainly don't think any team's calling up being like, we'll take on the salary or whatever. And I don't think Utah's in the mood to do a salary dump. Utah can afford their salaries. They don't really care. I'm thinking more if the Jazz decide to bring in a big salary as a way of sopping up their cap space in the summer because they don't see any a good opportunity to sign free agents this summer. If they're saying like, well, we should sop up our cap space by making a trade in February instead, I feel like those are candidates at their salaries to be included in such a thing where the acquiring team can be like, well, we don't think of them as positive assets, but they help make the trade work. And the second thing I'll mention is when I said I was being very cold and calculated about Keontae George, there might be some teams that are like, this is something to think about now, and it's like it would be kind of sad, but like I don't get too attached.
That's kind of what I was trying to say without saying it, because like everyone, I'm excited about what Keontae's done this season, but there's a chance that what he's done is played his way into where he's going to be a necessary ingredient when the Jazz eventually do make their big splash in the trade market. Because if the Jazz have a chance to go after a guy, and I'm not talking about a Giannis thing, although I heard your Giannis bit and whatever. Like I'm talking about like if someone who is an almost all-star who we don't think is available becomes available in the next 12 months, the Jazz are going to have to put some good players in that trade package. And 12 months ago, I don't think Keontae George was really greasing the skids in that conversation. And today he could grease those skids, and that is both a compliment and also a warning to say, like, hey, not everybody who's playing well on December 11th, year of our Lord 2025, does that mean that they will be in the 8-man rotation the next time the Jazz play a playoff game. In fact, one of the things we had talked about doing on this podcast, and I don't think we should because we're well over an hour now, is like if the over-under on how many players, how many of the top 8-minute guys on the next Jazz playoff team are on this roster currently. If the over-under on that were 2.5, if the over-under on that were 3.5, like what would you take? And that's a longer discussion and I won't get into it now. But like that's kind of the reality of where they're at, is that some guys are going to get good in a way that makes the Jazz go, okay, you're now part of our core. And some guys are going to get good in a way that makes the Jazz go, okay, now we can really leverage your increased value to go get what we need to make the rest of this come together. And I'm not saying that has to be Keyonte. I'm not saying that has to be Walker Kessler. But, I will just say that Keyonte George is about 7 months away from being able to negotiate an extension. And so the Jazz probably have to be thinking already about like, okay, what number are we comfortable with and what number are we like, okay, well, then we're going to shop you around. And if that's going to happen in 7 months. And so anyway, those are just the realities. And it sucks because, again, Keontae's having a hell of a season. He's having so much fun. We're having fun watching him. And yeah, that's exactly where I was trying to not go out loud, but you forced me there. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, it's that I'm being cold and calculated. The other guy I'm thinking of is if he gets his shit together because he had such a good season last year, Bryce Sensabaugh turns it around in the next 2 months and starts shooting 45% from three over the next 2 months. That's a player people want, like a young player who even has a much lower rookie scale contract right now. Like that's a player that would have interested a lot of people, and we'll see what happens with him. So I'm going into the next third of the season as we get into the trade deadline, kind of scoping around a lot of what other teams are positioning to do and thinking how Utah can get into playoff contention next year. Like, I don't think this team is as far away as we think, but it might require us to chop off a finger or two to, I don't know where I'm going with that metaphor, to just like, I will keep glomming on to the Brandon Ingram trade that the Raptors did. I think the Raptors were much further along than the Jazz are, but not much. It's a good degree further along than the Jazz are. And they traded for him. They gave him a 3-year, $120 million extension, and he never played a minute for them last year, the entire spring. And the Raptors could continue their super tank in the spring. So that type of deal isn't always available, but for a team like the Jazz that isn't going to sign a Carlos Boozer in free agency tomorrow, those are the types of things I'll be looking at as we get into the next third. And I'll just be looking for Ace Bailey and Walt Clayton. I think we've seen enough from them to say those are NBA rotation players. Let's see what they learn over the next third of the season while Lowry's still on the team.
Yeah. I think we hit most of the stuff we were going to talk about anyway. We didn't really talk about the Will Hardy thing. We'll save that. I find the dialogue amusing about the Will Hardy thing, but we'll save that. Mostly because, well, I get to interact a little bit with Will Hardy here and there because of my other gig. And I think he's for real, number one. Number two, I don't think anything we've seen on videos recently is even remotely out of the ordinary for an NBA coach.
Yeah.
I think it just is the fact that someone sitting close to the bench had a cell phone out.
I'm going to put you on the spot on something, and it's a film thing or a play design thing. I don't quite know NBA play vernacular so much, and I wanted to ask you over text or something. Maybe we can do it live. On the bench video, he said you didn't whip on Jalen Williams. On defense? What did he mean by that? Do you know? Or should we look into this later?
Whip on Jalen Williams. Yeah, I think that's Here's the thing. I couldn't make it out because I have old bad ears. So I have spent zero time thinking about that didn't whip on Jalen Williams. Maybe he just meant like the help and recover, like that Jalen, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the play that inspired that thing. And then the other thing I'll say about that video I remember I said we weren't going to talk about it. Now here I am talking about it. That
Whatever,
video
we're
was
here.
2.5. I mean, people did click play to hear us ostensibly talk about Jazz basketball. That video was 2.5 minutes into the game. So people who are like being dramatic about like, oh, players are going to tune him out if he just rips them a new one all the time, and that was his starting five. Those were his starting guys, all of whom played 25 plus minutes that night. Nobody got shut down. If it was Bryce Sensabaugh who he yelled at and then put in mothballs for the rest of the game, I would get that sentiment. But like, this is Will Hardy yelling at guys who he clearly trusts to understand how to go out and do the things he's yelling at them to do. I'm like 0% concerned about that. I think Will Hardy is the real deal. And like you said in a recent podcast, I can't remember if it was your last one or the previous one. I can't wait to evaluate Will in a playoff environment when it really matters. But I think he's a smart basketball coach and a smart leader of human persons.
Every single data point we have on him is being very, very high on EQ, and that the players love him. And we already see like having players like Kevin Love and George Niang around who also seem to clearly respect Will Hardy. Those are very important players to have in a locker room as well when things are hard and things are tough. And there's a difference in his approach, right? And that's why I wanted to ask you about that specific play type, because he's not just sitting there just like college coach yelling. He pointed out a specific thing that they screwed up and said, you didn't do the basic thing. I'm sick of talking about the basic things instead of just like, you're not running fast enough. And I think there's a big nuance there where he's telling them like, we have talked about a very specific thing that I believe that you can execute, or else I wouldn't be here. So
he uses the word execute a lot. He cares way more about, are you going to, like, we just had shoot around and we said that tonight when we face Jalen Williams, we're going to whip. I just Googled while you were talking. I don't know what he meant by that. That might be a Jazz specific term.
I figured it might be a Jazz thing. I wasn't sure.
Every X and O definition I can find for whip is like a whip pass or a whip cut or a whip, like an offensive thing. So IDK. But clearly there are things where they're like, all right, when we face Jalen Williams tonight, we're going to do this. When we face Denny Avdia, this is one he mentioned specifically. He's like, when we face Denny Avdia, we want to defend him a certain way. Then Jazz guys go out a few hours later and they completely forget that at shoot around today, Will Hardy told me he wanted me to guard Denny Avdia this way. And I think that matters way more to Will Hardy than, how many of your last 10 shots did you make? How fast did you run? Like, how nice were you in the locker room? Like, he wants guys who he can trust to execute. He uses the word execute all the time. Probably the only Jazz coach I've ever been around who used that word more often was Jerry Sloan. Jerry Sloan couldn't finish a sentence without saying the word execute.
My only criticism, and I don't even know if this is a criticism, but in fact, it's not a criticism. It's just an observation. How much does that run afoul of my desire to see chaos agency from Taylor Hendricks, right? Like, and I mentioned that earlier of just like, okay, Taylor Hendricks is more of a raw, toolsy, whatever. But if you're going to draft a guy like that, sure, and Will Hardy and the Angels, certainly, they and Justin Zanuck, they have like a very good symbiosis, it seems. I'm hoping that there is a little bit of understanding that, like, hey, if you have a toolsy mold of clay out there, you kind of got to let him not execute. But the problem is you can't give one guy leniency and then just yell at everyone else. So I'm wondering if this is, are we holding Taylor back because of his coaching style? There's way too many variables into this to actually make a conclusion here. It's just everything we know about Will Hardy does go against the idea of just letting a guy be a chaos agent. I'm going to keep using that word because I like saying chaos agent. But it also means that if he's not executing basic things, he can't play out there. But Taylor Hendricks versus Kevin Love being out there, I know Kevin Love is a backup center and Taylor Hendricks is not a backup center. But those are the minutes decisions that, as the Jazz are never really winning, but as we get into February, March, April, those are going to be the lineup choices sometimes. I feel a little odd when it's like all right, give these guys a break and just let guys figure out some things by getting some raw minutes at the end of the season as opposed to December. I don't have a natural conclusion, which is perfect after we've talked this long.
Yeah, me too. Samesies, and also like I firmly believe that there's going to come a point in this season when we're going to see more of Taylor Hendricks. We're going to see more of Walt Clayton. We're going to see more of Bryce Sensabaugh. We're even going to see more of Cody Williams. I mean, again, I'd love for Cody Williams to start to look like more of an NBA player, and I think he'll get that shot because I just think the last 40 games for the Jazz are going to look different than the first 40 games for the Jazz, and that's just the reality.
There are 59 games left, people.
Yeah.
There are so many games left.
Yeah. All right. Well, the Jazz have played about a third of those games, not quite a third, but as we said at the outset, this made a nice little pause here, a nice little moment to step back and look at some big picture things and some things that Mark and I were right about, wrong about, somewhere in between about. Mark, any parting thoughts before we close this baby down?
No, just I'm so happy for everyone tuning in week after week, and we'll keep doing it. And as always, I encourage we drop a lot of takes and opinions and observations. If you agree or disagree with anything, talk to us. Hit us up everywhere. Like we're doing this because we want to engage with our friends and people we don't know about Utah Jazz basketball. It's our favorite things in life, and then we can't wait to share it with the world. So we're not just talking at you. Talk back at us.
That's Mark. This is Dan. This has been a Salt City Hoops podcast. We'll talk to you soon.